He was a struggling single dad, fighting to keep food on the table and his dignity intact, one long day at a time. She was a billionaire, gliding through a world of power, deadlines, and high-stakes decisions. Their paths were never meant to cross, until a runaway truck shattered that divide in a heartbeat. What began as a split-second act of courage turned into an unexpected journey, one filled with unspoken scars, quiet resilience, and a love that neither of them saw coming. Because sometimes a single selfless moment has the power to rewrite two lives forever. Before we dive in, if you believe in the beauty of second chances, in stories that heal, inspire, and linger in your heart, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Every day we bring you original stories woven with hope, humanity, and the kind of love that echoes long after the story ends. Now, let's begin. It was meant to be just another ordinary Thursday. Nothing special. Nothing out of place. Jake Carter, a single father barely scraping by, zipped up the threadbare hoodie he'd worn for 3 winters too many. With one hand, he packed a modest lunch, half a sandwich, an apple, and the last of the crackers, while the other tightened the laces on his scuffed steel-toe boots. Behind him, at their small, wobbly kitchen table, sat his 8-year-old daughter Lily, swinging her legs as she munched on dry cereal from a chipped bowl. "Got your homework?" he asked, checking the time. 7:43 a.m., burned into his routine like second nature. "Yep, and the permission slip," Lily replied brightly, tapping her backpack. "Toothbrush?" She beamed, her mouth full of foam, and pointed. Jake chuckled. That little girl, bright-eyed, full of mischief, was his one undeniable success. The one thing he knew he'd done right in this mess of a life. By 8, they were walking side by side through the bustle of East Village, their fingers laced together. Jake's old pickup was at the shop again, so it was another morning on foot. The city buzzed around them, street vendors hollering about fresh bagels, delivery bikers weaving between lanes, and taxis honking in a chaos that somehow made sense to lifelong New Yorkers. Then, something shattered the rhythm. A metallic crash split through the morning noise like a scream in a cathedral. Jake's head snapped toward the sound, a jolt of instinct tightening every muscle. Around the corner he saw it. A garbage truck, massive and driverless, barreling downhill on East 9th. The driver's side door flapped wildly, open like a broken wing. Screams followed, cars skidded, people scattered. And in the path of that mechanical beast stood a woman. Impeccably dressed in a sharp white coat, her heels clicked on the pavement as if she ruled the world. She hadn't noticed the chaos descending behind her. Jake didn't think, he reacted. "Stay here," he barked at Lily, already sprinting into the street. He dodged a cab, leapt over a toppled cyclist, and reached her with seconds to spare. She turned. Too late. Jake slammed into her side, arms wrapping tightly around her waist as he tackled them both out of harm's way. They crashed onto the pavement just as the truck thundered past, its tires shrieking before it collided with a lamppost. The pole bent, groaned, then slammed into the concrete with a shattering roar. Silence fell like a curtain. Jake lay breathless, the woman trembling beneath him, her blue eyes wide and locked on his. Her dark hair had come undone, spilling like silk around her face. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low and rough. She nodded, speechless. He gently unwrapped his arms and helped her sit up. "You should probably stay down. That truck almost—" "I know what it almost did," she said, her voice shaky but strong. People began to crowd around. Someone was filming, someone else was shouting for help. Then Jake heard a familiar voice. "Daddy!" Lily ran to him, her eyes wide with fear. He dropped to one knee and pulled her close. "I told you to stay," he murmured. "I did, but I saw the truck and I thought—" Her voice broke, trembling. "But I didn't die, baby," he said softly, brushing her hair back. The woman was still staring. Jake turned to her. "You should let the EMTs take a look. Shock has a way of sneaking up on you." "You're hurt," she said instead, pointing to a cut on his forearm. Blood trailed down unnoticed by him until now. "It's nothing." Just then a man in a suit pushed through the crowd, breathless. "Miss Monroe, are you all right?" She turned slowly, her gaze still fixed on Jake. "I'm fine, thanks to him." Jake blinked. "Miss Monroe?" "Not just any woman. Alexis Monroe, CEO of Monroe Media Group, billionaire, face of half the billboards in the city, and he'd just tackled her to the sidewalk like a linebacker." I didn't know who you were," Jake said awkwardly. "Sorry if I hurt you." "Hurt me?" Her voice cracked, full of disbelief. "You saved my life." Paramedics appeared, one guiding Alexis gently to the curb, the other inspecting Jake's wound. He waved them off, but Lily tugged on his sleeve. "Let them look, Daddy." Alexis sat still for a long moment before standing again. Her heels crunched broken glass as she stepped toward them. "Wait," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "What's your name?" He hesitated. "Jake Carter." She nodded, her eyes drinking him in like she was memorizing each line of his face. "Jake Carter, I owe you my life." He gave her a lopsided smile. "Nah, just your morning coffee. Now if you'll excuse us." He took Lily's hand, and before the swarm of reporters could descend, they slipped back into the city. That night, Alexis sat alone in her penthouse. The footage, filmed by a bystander, was already viral. She watched it again and again. The way Jake moved without hesitation, the protective way he held her, the quiet strength in his voice. And that little girl who ran to his side, calling him Daddy with such relief. It rattled her. Not the near-death experience, but him. The way he looked at her like she was just another human being, not some untouchable icon. "Jake Carter," she whispered into her wine glass, heart pounding. "Who are you, and why do I already miss you?" By morning, headlines were everywhere. "Mystery man saves billionaire from runaway truck." "Who is the hero dad who vanished after the rescue?" On talk shows, analysts dissected every frame. Some called him a modern-day superhero. Others speculated if it was all a stunt. Only Alexis knew the truth, and she couldn't get him out of her mind. In the back of her Bentley, her assistant Karen droned on about meetings. "PR wants to know if you'll release a statement." "Forget the statement," Alexis interrupted, eyes distant. "Did you find him?" Karen blinked. "You mean the mechanic?" "I don't know what he is," Alexis snapped, more emotion in her voice than she liked. "That's why I need you to find him. Jake Carter, daughter named Lily, somewhere near East 9th. I want to know everything." "Yes, ma'am." Across town, in a greasy little auto shop in Brooklyn, Jake Carter wiped his hands on an old rag. He'd unplugged the phone after turning away 3 reporters and sending one woman and her camera crew packing with a glare and a grease-stained wrench. He liked his quiet, needed it. Lily sat nearby, doodling stars in her notebook. "You okay, Peanut?" She nodded. "Is that lady okay, the one you saved?" Jake paused. "Yeah, she's fine. She didn't seem mean." He leaned against the workbench, thoughtful. "No, she didn't." That night, Alexis combed through security footage and pieced together his path. A license plate here, a blurry image there. Within hours, she had his name, address, and the name of his shop, Carter's Auto and Salvage. "Should I schedule a meeting?" Karen asked over the phone. "No," Alexis said quietly. "He'll think it's a business ploy. I'll go myself." The next morning, Jake was half buried under a rusted-out Buick when he heard the heels. He always knew when someone didn't belong. He rolled out from beneath the car, wiped his hands, and stood. There she was, Alexis Monroe, radiant in a navy trench coat and sunglasses, standing in the middle of his garage like a Monet hung in a dive bar. The other mechanics froze. "You're a long way from Wall Street," Jake said dryly. She removed her sunglasses. "You're a hard man to find, Mr. Carter." He gestured toward the door. "That your car out front? Must be lost. I came to thank you, properly. You already did. You can go now." She blinked, caught off guard. "Is this how you treat gratitude?" Jake shrugged. "Usually people like you disappear after the headlines fade, but here you are, still curious." "I am curious," she said. "Why you did it, why you walked away, how you moved like that. Calm, precise. That was training." Jake said nothing. "Military?" She probed. "First responder?" Still silence. "You're hiding something," she said softly, "and it's not shame. It's something noble. I want to know what." Jake looked her square in the eye. "What I'm not, Miss Monroe, is your next project," she faltered. "You want a headline? A redemption arc for your boardroom speeches? Find someone else. I'm not for sale. Not my past, not my daughter, not my life." The garage went quiet. Even the air seemed to pause. Alexis stood, stunned and strangely impressed. She adjusted her coat. "I'll be in touch," she said. "Don't bother," Jake called after her. Outside, her hand trembled on the car door. It wasn't fury that pounded in her chest. It was awe. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not with disdain, but with principle. Jake Carter wasn't a story to be bought. He was a man carved from something rare, something real. And for the first time in a long time, Alexis Monroe wasn't sure if she wanted him for business. Or something far more dangerous. She wanted to know the kind of love that money could never buy. The kind that lived inside a man like Jake Carter. And Jake, whether he liked it or not, had just stepped into a story far bigger than himself. Jake Carter didn't care for cameras. He didn't care for questions. He just worked. In the dim light of his garage, the only sounds were the clink of tools, the distant hum of traffic, and the low rumble of a nearby radio. Jake's hands were blackened with grease, his mind focused solely on the old engine before him. That is, until the unmistakable purr of a sleek, high-performance engine broke through the usual noise like a silver needle tearing fabric. He looked up, brows knitting. The car that pulled into the lot didn't belong, sleek, polished, and sinfully expensive. The luxury coupe gleamed like liquid mercury amid the sea of rusted pickups and weathered sedans. Jake let out a slow sigh. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered. The gull-wing door lifted in a slow, calculated arc like a stage curtain rising, and out stepped Alexis Monroe, not in heels or a power suit, not flanked by assistants or followed by flashing bulbs. She wore a soft blouse and dark jeans, her designer heels replaced by worn sneakers. She was alone. Jake leaned casually against the open hood of a Jeep, arms crossed. "Didn't expect you to be slumming it twice in 1 week." A small, knowing smile played at her lips. "Well, if I'm going to be publicly humbled by a man, I thought I ought to be properly introduced." "You already know my name," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "What's your excuse this time? Battery trouble? Brakes?" "No issue," she said plainly, stepping further into the garage. Her eyes flicked over the shelves, the rows of labelled tools, the lived-in quiet of the space. "I just needed an excuse." Jake arched a brow. "You mean to tell me you drove a $200,000 car into Brooklyn for a fake repair?" She shrugged gently. "It worked, didn't it?" From the edge of the garage, a small head peeked out. Lily, clutching her sketchbook to her chest. Her eyes widened when she saw Alexis. Jake turned. "Lily, this is Miss Monroe." "I remember," the little girl said brightly, stepping forward. Then she turned to Jake. "Daddy, she's really pretty." Jake cleared his throat awkwardly. Alexis crouched to Lily's level, a softness blooming in her expression. "And you must be the bravest girl in New York," she said. Lily giggled. "Daddy says I'm the reason he doesn't give up." Jake's expression faltered, the hardness in his eyes melting. "That's true." Alexis stood and dusted off her jeans. "I know this is a bit forward," she said, voice gentle, "but I'd like to take you both to dinner." Jake shook his head, a wall already rising. "We're not a charity case." "This isn't charity," she replied, her eyes steady. "It's a thank you for saving my life, for vanishing before I could even say more than 2 words. Dinner with a billionaire," Jake muttered. "Real subtle." "It's a diner around the corner," she said with a soft smile. "Booths, milkshakes, paper menus, no paparazzi, no press. Just dinner, just thanks." Lily tugged at his sleeve. "Can we, Daddy, please?" Jake looked at his daughter, her face bright with hope. He sighed. "Fine, but I'm not changing clothes." The diner was nearly empty, a faded, comfortable place where the booths stuck to your jeans and the waitress knew your name. Jake slid into the booth across from Alexis while Lily nestled beside him, sketchbook in hand. The waitress blinked at Alexis, recognition flickering behind her eyes, but said nothing, simply took their orders and disappeared. For a moment, the silence hovered awkwardly. Alexis stirred her iced tea. Jake pretended to read the menu. Lily coloured quietly. Then Alexis spoke, her voice warm. "So, Lily, what do you want to be when you grow up?" "A rocket designer," Lily said proudly, "like Daddy used to be." Jake's hand froze mid-motion. Alexis looked at him, surprised. "Is that true?" Jake nodded, exhaling slowly. "I was an aerospace engineer, a long time ago." "What happened?" He gave a small shrug. "Things went wrong. People got hurt. I walked away. But when it came to saving me..." Alexis began. "That was just reflex," he said. "Doesn't mean I want back in." Lily looked up, her voice softer now. "Daddy used to work on real planes, but then Mommy..." Her words faded, her smile dimming. Jake reached out and placed a gentle hand over hers. "Hey, it's okay." Alexis's heart clenched. "You don't have to tell me." His jaw tightened. Then he said quietly, "She was a flight attendant. There was a malfunction, one I'd warned the company about. They didn't listen. The plane went down. She never came home." Alexis sat in stillness, the weight of his grief hanging in the air. "I tried to tell the truth," he added. "Got blacklisted. So I left. Started over. Here. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was reverent, full of what had been left unsaid for too long. Then Lily brightened. Want to see my drawing? I'd love to, Alexis said, leaning forward. Lily slid her notebook across the table, a pencil sketch of Jake holding her hand in front of a towering rocket. Beneath it, she had written, "My daddy is a real hero." Alexis blinked, her throat thick. It's beautiful. Jake rubbed the back of his neck, trying to deflect. She's got her mom's heart. Outside, the night air was cool and clean. Alexis walked with them toward the garage, the city lights shimmering in the distance. I meant what I said, she told Jake. You're not just a good man, you're a great one. He kept his eyes on the pavement. Don't put me on a pedestal. I'll only disappoint you. I don't believe that. They reached the corner. Alexis hesitated, her voice lower now. That was the best dinner I've had in years. Jake offered a tired, crooked smile. Then you really need to eat in better places. She laughed. Maybe I just need to eat with better people. She turned to Lily and knelt. Thank you for letting me borrow your dad. Lily threw her arms around her. You can borrow him again. Just bring milkshakes next time. Jake's breath caught. Alexis looked up at him. Good night, Jake. Good night, Alexis. She walked away into the haze of the city, the silence between them full of something neither could name. Jake stood still, heart beating a little too fast. For the first time in years, he didn't want to disappear. Weeks passed. One evening, Jake stood in the entrance of a quiet restaurant tucked between glass towers in Midtown, holding Lily's small hand like it was the only solid thing in the world. The soft clink of silverware, the scent of rosemary and seared meat, the hush of jazz, all of it pressed in around him. Daddy, are we supposed to be here? Lily whispered. Jake leaned down. Probably not. He'd done the best he could, swapped his oil-stained jacket for a flannel shirt with an intact collar. Lily wore her school shoes and a sundress she'd nearly outgrown, her hair in messy braids she'd insisted on doing herself. Then Alexis appeared. No diamonds, no flash. Just a cream sweater, soft slacks, and a smile that said she was glad they came. Jake grunted. Place is fancy. They let me in, she replied, so they'll let you in too. The hostess hesitated, then recognized Alexis and ushered them to a booth by the window. Candles glowed softly on the glass. It felt private, quiet, real. Jake sat beside Lily, arms folded like armor. Alexis noticed. You hate this, she said. He didn't answer. I didn't bring you here to impress you, she added. I just thought maybe it was time you saw my world. You let me into yours. Jake glanced around. This your world? Looks like a performance. She blinked. How so? He leaned in slightly. You took off your heels. You sat on the curb with us. That night, you weren't playing CEO. You were just you, this. He gestured around. This feels like armor again. She looked down. Maybe I'm still figuring out which version of me is real. Before he could reply, the waiter came. Alexis ordered grilled salmon. Jake grunted at the menu. Burger, fries, whatever soda comes with it. Lily grinned. Mac and cheese, please. I don't eat foam or flowers, Jake muttered. Alexis laughed. Noted. Then Jake asked, why are you really doing this? She looked at him calm. Because you saved me, and because most people want something from me. You didn't. Jake shook his head. People don't go this far for a stranger unless they're hoping not to stay strangers. She set her glass down. Honesty for honesty, then. She looked at Lily, then lowered her voice. I haven't felt safe in a long time, not just physically, emotionally. I'm always surrounded by people trying to impress me, use me, replace me. But you didn't care who I was. You acted. No ego, no calculation, just goodness. Lily looked up. That's just my dad. Jake chuckled, brushing her bangs. Let's not raise the bar too high. But it's true, she said. Even when people are mean, he still helps them. Alexis smiled. That doesn't surprise me. Jake leaned back. I've made mistakes too. Don't make me a saint for one good deed. Maybe it's not about getting it all right, Alexis said. Maybe it's about showing up when it counts. Dinner flowed easier after that. They talked, laughed, shared stories. Jake even confessed to blowing up a microwave once while fixing a toaster. By the time dessert was done, Alexis felt something she hadn't in years, a full heart. Outside, under a flickering lamppost, she handed Lily a small bag. Emergency cake, midnight rations. Lily squealed. You're the best! Jake looked at her. You didn't have to do all this. I know, he hesitated. You're not what I expected. Neither are you. A cab pulled up. She paused at the door. "I don't know what this is," she said softly, "but I'd like to find out, if you'll let me." Jake held her gaze. "I'll think about it." She smiled. "That's more than I hoped for." Then she was gone, swallowed by the city. And Jake stood there, Lily's hand in his, cake in the other, and a quiet blooming in his chest. For a man who'd long ago given up on second chances, this one didn't feel so impossible. Jake Carter. The voice drifted through the open garage door, warm, familiar, but laced with something resolute. Jake straightened from beneath the hood of an old Buick, his movements slow, deliberate. There she was, Alexis Monroe. Standing just inside, shoulders drawn under a navy raincoat darkened by drizzle, an envelope cradled beneath her arm. No makeup today, just clear eyes that saw far too much. "You again," Jake muttered, wiping his hands with a rag. "If this keeps up, people will think I work for you." "I'm hoping you will." Her tone was light, but there was weight beneath it as she extended the envelope. He didn't reach for it. "What is it?" "A formal offer," she replied. "Consulting engineering, 6-month contract, flexible hours, remote if you want, full access to cutting-edge propulsion tech. We're launching a new division." Jake didn't move. His fingers flexed against the oil-streaked cloth. "It's not charity," Alexis added, sensing the old wool rising behind his eyes. "I read your patents, the work you did on thermal shielding. Jake, you were years ahead of everyone." He glanced at his grease-stained hands, the same ones that once sketched impossible systems and rewrote the rules of aerospace. That was a lifetime ago. Then maybe it's time to reclaim it. Jake exhaled, the air leaving him heavy. "You know what happens to people like me in places like yours? You mean people with morals?" "No," he said quietly. "People with scars." She stepped closer, raindrops sliding from her coat. "Everyone at the top is either hiding one or carrying one. I'd rather work with someone who already survived his." Still he hesitated. "Jake," her voice softened, "this isn't about saving me anymore. It's about you, about building again. Not for headlines, for you." His gaze drifted to the envelope. His heart pounded. "I swore I was done," he said hoarsely, "after the crash, after they covered it up." "I know what happened," she said gently. "I found the flight reports, the warnings you filed, that even the whistleblower memo buried under redacted names and legal threats. But the initials matched." Jake froze. No one had ever put the pieces together. Not the lawyers, not the journalists, not even the families. "I had my team verify everything," Alexis continued. "What they did, it wasn't just negligence. It was a cover-up." His hands clenched into fists. Memories rose like smoke. Charred fuselage, a phone call too late, a daughter without a mother. "And you want me to walk back into that world like none of it happened?" "No," Alexis said softly. "I want you to change it." Later that day, Jake stood alone in the garage office, the envelope untouched on his desk. Through the small window he watched Lily at the table, humming gently as she worked through her homework. Her legs swung in quiet rhythm, and for a moment, time slipped. He remembered her small hand in Anna's at the airport. A hurried wave. One last kiss. Seattle. The last time his family had been whole. "Daddy?" Jake blinked. "You okay?" Lily asked, looking up with curious eyes. "You're staring," he managed to smile. "Just thinking about the lady." Lily tilted her head. "She likes you." "Oh," he arched a brow. "She looks at you the way I look at brownies." Jake burst out laughing. "That's quite the compliment." "She's nice and smart, but I think she's lonely." He paused. "Lonely?" "Like you." Lily's voice was matter-of-fact. "You smile, but your eyes don't always smile." Jake swallowed hard. The honesty of children had a way of piercing through what adulthood armored. "Miss Monroe offered me a job," he admitted. Lily perked up. "Really? Like an engineering job?" He nodded. "Are you going to take it?" "I don't know yet." "It's complicated." Lily's face grew thoughtful. "Would Mommy want you to?" That stopped him cold. "Would she?" Jake turned toward the rain-speckled window. Anna had always believed in him, even when he stopped believing in himself. She used to call him her dream mechanic, not because he fixed broken things, but because he saw what others couldn't. Maybe Alexis was right. Maybe it was time to stop hiding in the wreckage. That evening, under a grey sky, Jake walked through a small park near his neighbourhood. The envelope remained sealed in his jacket pocket. He spotted her, Alexis, alone on a bench beneath a metal awning, paperback in hand, hair damp and curling at the edges. He approached. I haven't said yes, he said quietly. She looked up, not surprised. But you came. I read your offer, he said. It's generous. The work sounds real. He hesitated, his voice low. You want someone to help you break barriers, rebuild systems, but I don't know if I can walk back into that world and not lose myself again. Alexis closed her book and met his gaze. I'm not looking for a savior, Jake. I want a partner. Someone who isn't afraid to speak the truth, no matter the cost. Jake studied her. The girl behind limo glass was gone. In her place stood a woman, soaked and sincere, asking not for heroics, but trust. All right, he said. I'll come in part-time. No suits. I work from the garage. She smiled. Deal. As he turned to leave, she called out. Jake? He glanced back. I'm glad you didn't disappear again. He gave her a tired, almost shy smile. Me too. The hangar didn't look like the place he'd left years ago. It was sleek now. Glass offices, polished floors, automated doors. But the air still smelled the same. Oil, pressure, potential. Jake Carter walked in wearing jeans and his usual work jacket, visitor badge clipped to his collar. No one greeted him like a hero. That was fine. Behind reinforced glass, engineers darted between simulations and schematics. On one monitor, a 3D engine model rotated. Phoenix X, the future of electric propulsion. Jake's eyes scanned it, mind already breaking it down. You see it, don't you? Came a voice beside him. Alexis. She looked different today. Simpler. A blazer, a ponytail, coffee in hand. Not a billionaire, just a builder. Jake nodded at the screen. Heat sinks are undercalibrated. At scale, they'll destabilize at 75% load. She raised a brow. Can you fix it? I know I can. Then come. In the conference room, the lights dimmed as she tapped a control. A diagram illuminated the wall, Phoenix X. This is the first of 3 hybrid engines, she said. Electric startup, combustion assist for altitude gain, designed to replace short-haul jets in 5 years. Jake let out a low whistle. Ambitious and dangerous. Which is why I need your eyes on everything, Alexis said. Schematics, fault tolerance, safety. The young engineers are good, but they've never built for lives. Jake's expression darkened. Neither did the last team I worked with, until it was too late. She leaned in. Tell me what happened. He hesitated, then spoke. Vega 7. We were designing a lightweight regional jet. During tests, I flagged a heat signature anomaly. Multiple memos. They told me it was within tolerance. They pushed it anyway. 10 months later, Flight 326 went down. 32 dead. One of them was Anna. Silence fell. Alexis didn't speak. Didn't need to. Jake stared at his hands. I couldn't fix the past, so I walked away. You didn't fail, she said. They did, and now you're the only one I trust to make sure it never happens again. He met her eyes. Then we do it right. No corners, no compromise. Agreed, they shook hands. Not as colleagues, as comrades. Over the next week, Jake embedded himself in the team, not in suits but in sweat and smudged prints. He rewired systems, recalculated airflow ratios by hand, trained the juniors not from manuals but from lived experience. At first they whispered, the garage guy, but all replaced doubt when they saw him work. He became their anchor. And Alexis, she watched from the mezzanine, proud but wary. The past still clung like static. So she dug deeper. 3 nights later, in her penthouse, moonlight washing over marble, Alexis pulled up a file. Linen Aerospace, Internal Investigation, Vega 7, restricted access. She scrolled until a name froze her blood. Failure warning submitted by Carter Jacob. Beneath it, suppression authorized by Blake Carson, VP of Engineering. She leaned back, eyes flint. Carson Blake, now a senior partner at Stratwell Dynamics, Monroe's top defense contractor. Her jaw set. The next morning, Jake entered the garage at dawn. Lily slept on the couch, a book sprawled across her chest. He covered her with a blanket, turned on the lights. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Jake, it's Alexis. I need you to see something, privately. They met at a quiet cafe, tucked far from towers and headlines. She slid her phone across the table. Jake stared. Carson Blake, smug, untouched. He buried your report, Alexis said. I have proof. Red tape won't help, but public truth might. Jake shook his head. I didn't come back to start a war. No, she agreed. You came to build something better, but rot doesn't go away until someone exposes it. His hands trembled. He stole more than my job. He stole Lily's mother. Her eyes locked onto his. So what are we going to do about it? Jake stared back. The storm inside him calm now, cold, ready. Everything they never expected. By morning, Jake Carter stood on the edge of a battlefield, not of bombs or guns, but of suits and smiles and silent power. Alexis had summoned a private panel, engineers, ethicists, regulators, people who understood. Jake had no speech, just records, truth. Lily had asked him earlier, "Daddy, are you nervous?" "No, sweetheart," he'd said, pulling on his old jacket. "I'm ready." And he was. Because now, the dream mechanic was building something again, not out of ambition, but out of redemption, and this time the world was watching. Cathedral of steel and truth. The boardroom was a cathedral of steel and glass, sharp with light and the sterile weight of power. At its head sat Alexis Monroe, polished and composed, but with a face so unreadable it might as well have been carved from stone. To her right stood Jake Carter, still in canvas and worn denim, his boots dusty, his calloused hands empty, but for the one thing that mattered now, the truth. Across from them sat 7 individuals, each with titles that spoke of prestige and consequence, engineers, ethicists, aviation safety experts, and legal minds versed in the complexities of aerospace law. Beside them sat a federal notary and an official from the FAA's Internal Compliance Division. The room felt like a courtroom cloaked in corporate glass, the kind where truths were either exhumed or buried. Alexis broke the silence first. Her voice was clear and unwavering. "Thank you all for coming. This isn't a press event. This isn't spin. What you're about to see is the truth, raw and unvarnished. It's the reason one of our nation's largest aerospace tragedies wasn't an accident at all. It was the result of conscious, deliberate negligence, buried under a mountain of corporate greed. And this man, Jake Carter, was the only one who tried to stop it." Jake stepped forward. No podium, no notes, just the weight of everything he'd carried for years. "I'm not here to impress you. I don't do speeches and I don't have a PR team. But I do have facts. I have memories that keep me awake every night, and I have proof." He walked them through a timeline as meticulously as he might rebuild an engine, memo by memo, chart by chart. Safety concerns raised and disregarded, reports altered, warnings ignored, and then he revealed the final blow, a digital memo, intact and damning, with signatures from Carson Blake and 3 senior Linden Aerospace executives. Jake read it aloud, his voice sharp with restrained fury. "Carter's heat signature analysis is credible, but if we delay rollout, Stratwell Dynamics pulls funding. Suppress and proceed." A silence settled over the room like smoke, thick, choking. One of the engineers, a former NASA consultant, leaned forward, his voice almost a whisper. "You wrote that analysis. How long before the crash?" Jake's jaw clenched. 73 days. Another asked, "And they fired you?" He nodded once. "Badge deactivated, email wiped, 1 week after the crash." Outside, clouds gathered, dense and grey, but inside that sterile glass room, clarity split through like a lightning bolt. The FAA official stood. "Mr. Carter, I'd like your full affidavit. We're reopening the Vega 7 investigation today, and we're not routing this through corporate lawyers. We're taking it straight to the Department of Transportation." Jake only nodded. Alexis exhaled a breath she'd been holding since the moment the meeting began. The truth, after all these years, was no longer buried. That evening, the city lights bled into the twilight as Jake and Alexis stood on the rooftop of Monroe Tower. Wind pressed gently against the skyline, brushing against their skin like a question waiting for an answer. "I thought I'd feel lighter," Jake murmured, hands in his pockets. "You don't?" He shook his head. "I feel hollow, like I've been holding this thing so tightly for so long, and now that it's gone, I don't know how to stand up straight." Alexis handed him a small flask. "Just coffee," she said, sitting on the low ledge. "That's what justice feels like at first," she added. "Not like fireworks, more like finally breathing again after years underwater." He took a sip, then stared out at the glittering sprawl below. "What happens next?" "They'll investigate. The press will follow. Blake will be named, so will the others. Some will settle, some will fall hard." "He'll lawyer up," Jake said. "He already has," she replied. "Called our legal team this morning. Acted shocked by the allegations." Jake gave a dark chuckle. "Of course he did." Alexis hesitated, her voice tightening. "He also threatened us. Said if we don't drop it quietly, Stratwell pulls out of our propulsion division." Jake turned to her, eyes narrowing. "That's your future, your entire next-gen engine platform." "I know. And you're still moving forward?" She looked straight at him, no waver in her gaze. "Jake, I've built empires, outplayed rivals. I've been ruthless when I needed to be. But the moment I heard you say you weren't letting this go, I've never been more sure of anything in my life." He blinked, taken aback by the fire in her voice. "So no," she said, "we're not dropping anything." The silence between them wasn't tense. It was charged. Real. Honest. Jake took a slow step forward. "You're risking a lot." "So are you," she said, "but maybe we're not doing it alone anymore." Down on the street, news vans gathered like vultures. The story had broken. Somewhere across the city, Carson Blake was probably smashing something expensive. Jake didn't care. He looked at Alexis again, and she looked back. No walls, no armor. Just a man and a woman standing at the edge of something vast. Not war. Possibility. The garage was quiet the next morning. Jake liked it that way. The ticking of cooling engines, the scent of oil and steel, and the soft clink of tools settling into place. It was peace. His temple, his sanctuary. And today, more than ever, he needed it. The headlines screamed his name. "Hero engineer blows whistle on Vega 7 disaster. Department of Transportation reopens case after 8 years. Monroe CEO supports bombshell testimony, stock slides 3%. Jake had turned the TV off. He didn't want the noise. He wasn't chasing redemption. He was chasing silence. Peace. Instead, he found a visitor. A kid, maybe 17, maybe 18, stood just outside the garage, thin and nervous, a duffel slung over one shoulder. His sneakers were caked with grime that told its own story. Jake gave him a nod. "You lost?" The boy hesitated. "You fix engines?" Jake wiped his hands. "That's what the sign says. I saw the video, the one where you talked about standing up to them." Jake's shoulders tensed. The boy stepped forward. "My dad, he worked baggage on Flight 326. He was on that plane." The air changed. Heavy now, too still. "I just wanted to say..." The kid's voice cracked. "I always thought nobody cared, that nobody fought for them, until I saw you." Jake's throat tightened. Gratitude hit harder than blame. "You got a name?" "Javi." Jake looked him over. "You know anything about torque converters?" The kid blinked. "No. You want to learn?" A smile broke, tentative but real. "Yeah, I do." Jake handed him a wrench. That's where healing started. Not in courtrooms, but in moments like this, in purpose. Later that week, Alexis returned, this time with Lily in tow, both carrying ice cream cones. Their new Friday tradition, post-school visits to the garage where the air smelled of grease and stories and something more precious. Normalcy. Lily darted to her corner, drawing in crayon and colour, while Alexis lingered, watching Jake guide Javi through a carburetor disassembly. There was something magnetic about him when he taught, steady, patient, present. No ego. Just a man pouring knowledge into another. "I'm opening a second R&D facility," Alexis said once Jake had finished. "Connecticut, clean energy, mixed discipline. I want it to be a place where kids like Javi can learn, build, belong." Jake looked up. "That's ambitious." "I'm modelling it after this," she said simply, gesturing to the garage. "Less polish, more heart." Jake wiped his hands. "You're giving me too much credit." "No," she said gently. "I'm giving you exactly what you've earned." She hesitated, then added, "I want you to help design the program, not part-time, full-time." Jake stared. "You want me to walk away from this?" "Not walk away. Grow it. Keep the garage open. Use it as a live lab, paid apprenticeships, real change." He leaned back, still skeptical. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." "Why me?" She smiled. "Because when the cameras fade and the press moves on, you're still the man who looks a kid in the eye and hands him a wrench. That's worth more than anything I could ever pay you." Jake studied her. She wasn't pitching a dream. She was offering a legacy. "You really think I'm that man?" "I don't have to think it," she whispered. "I've seen it." That night, Jake sat on the front steps of his small house, Lily beside him, the stars above dim but stubborn against the city haze. "You okay, Daddy?" she asked, snuggling close. He nodded. "Just thinking." "About her?" He chowways. "She's pretty." Jake raised an eyebrow. "You think that's what I'm thinking about?" Lily looked at him, all sincerity. "No, I think you're wondering if you can trust her." Jake glanced back up at the stars. "You're getting too smart." "I get it from Mommy." He smiled, the ache in his chest gentle for once. "Lily," he said after a pause, "what if this garage could help more people? What if it was a place where people found their way again?" "Like Javi?" "Exactly." Lily leaned her head on his arm. "Then I think Mommy would be really proud of you." Jake swallowed hard, his heart full and aching. "Then maybe it's time," he whispered. The next morning, Jake stepped into Monroe Tower, not in grease-stained clothes, but in his best shirt, clean-shaven and steady. Alexis was waiting on the rooftop helipad, the wind whipping her hair like a flag. He held out his hand. "I'm in." Her smile lit up more than the skyline. "Let's build something that outlives both of us," she said. Jake nodded. "But no suits," she laughed. "No suits." The sky had finally cleared, but not with peace. Instead, it carried the eerie stillness before another storm. Though sunlight bathed the city, there was no mistaking the pressure building beneath the surface. Monroe Media's stock had slipped 2 points after Alexis Monroe took a stand. Not just any stand. She had gone on record, publicly backing Jake Carter and his testimony, a move that sent shockwaves through the industry. Most CEOs, when facing public scrutiny, would retreat behind sanitized press releases, soften their stance, or hide behind legal counsel. Alexis did none of that. She did the opposite. She leaned in. She showed up on 60 Minutes. She addressed the National Aviation Ethics Forum. She walked into the Department of Transportation beside Jake, no longer in her signature designer heels, but in flats. And by her side stood a man in a canvas work jacket, a mechanic with grease still under his nails. Suddenly, the old narrative cracked wide open. Everything looked and felt different. And with difference came danger. It began as murmurs in the press. Then the editorials sharpened. Is Monroe Media sacrificing its future for a disgraced engineer? Wall Street winces at CEO's reckless loyalty. Billion-dollar boardroom meltdown incoming? And then, on a bitter Thursday morning, it arrived. A formal letter, crisp and damning, from Monroe Media's board of directors. It demanded that Alexis recuse herself from all strategic decision-making, pending an internal review. Cloaked in legalese, it cited reputational risk, liability concerns, and questionable personal entanglements. Jake sat across from her in her office, staring at the document, silent. Alexis, calm as ever, poured herself a cup of tea with deliberate grace. "This isn't legal," Jake said, scanning it again. "No," Alexis replied softly, "but it's calculated." His jaw tightened. "They're punishing you for standing by me." She looked up at him, her voice low but firm. "No, Jake, they're punishing me for stepping outside the role they carved for me. Clean, controlled, compliant." She took a sip of tea. "I broke the one rule they love most." Jake raised a brow. "Which is?" "Don't care about people more than profits." Jake leaned forward, heat rising in his voice. "Then fight them. Call a press conference. Bring the engineers, the documents. Show them what they buried, what you helped uncover." But Alexis shook her head. "That's their game. Explosions, lawsuits, deflections. I'm not playing that anymore." Jake exhaled, defeated. "Then what are you going to do?" She met his eyes with the quiet conviction of someone who had nothing left to fear. "I'm going to give them the one thing they've never had." "What's that?" "A mirror." That very afternoon, Alexis summoned the board. No cameras, no recording devices. Just 12 powerful executives seated at a polished mahogany table, and the woman who built the empire they claimed to control. Jake waited outside the glass-paneled conference room, flanked by Karen and Lily. The receptionist offered him coffee. He declined. Lily, unbothered, was buried in A Wrinkle in Time for the 3rd time that month. Inside, Alexis stood alone. "I've read your letter," she began, voice calm but resolute, "and I've come to offer my reply." She slid a thick folder across the table. The weight of it hit with a satisfying thud. Inside, you'll find documentation of 12 instances over the past decade where this company chose image over integrity. Some of these, I imagine, you'd prefer not to see reach a courtroom. Several board members visibly stiffened. "I've poured years into making Monroe Media a beacon of innovation. But this," she gestured around them, "this isn't about me anymore. It's about the culture you've allowed to fester behind the drywall. You say I'm reckless. I say I've finally found the courage to tell the truth." She paused. "I stand by Jake Carter, not just because he saved my life, but because his life proves something we've all forgotten. Doing the right thing is never the wrong investment." The room fell silent. Finally, the chairman asked, "Are you threatening us?" "No," Alexis replied evenly. "I'm inviting you to change, reform with me. Or watch this company bleed talent the moment I walk out that door." She stood. I'm giving you 48 hours, not out of courtesy, out of fairness." Then she turned and left. Downstairs, Jake looked up as she stepped into the lobby. Her face was pale but calm. "Well?" he asked. She exhaled. "I just told a room full of billionaires their arrogance kills people." Jake laughed. "I'm sure that went over well." "I wasn't looking for applause." She turned to him, tired, worn, but radiant with a clarity he'd never seen before. "I'm not trying to win anymore," she said. "I'm trying to matter." Jake pulled a folded paper from his jacket and handed it to her. "What's this?" she asked. "My first schematic for the training center," he said. "Drafted it last night." She opened it. Pencil-drawn lines, labels for solar grids and ventilation paths, a design both humble and brilliant. "You still dream in blueprints," she whispered. Jake smiled. "Only when there's something worth building." Their eyes locked. They didn't need words. Lily's voice broke the silence. "Are you guys going to kiss or what?" Jake burst out laughing. Alexis blushed scarlet. "What?" Lily shrugged. "I read romance now. It's always obvious." That night, Monroe Tower's rooftop garden stood quiet beneath the stars. Jake and Alexis leaned against the edge, the city alive beneath their feet. "They're going to come at you harder," Jake warned. "You could lose everything." "I already did," she said softly, "before I met you." He turned to her. "I don't want to be the reason your world crumbles." She looked up at him. "You're not the reason it crumbles. You're the reason it means something now." And then she kissed him. Not a performance. Not a transaction. Just two people who had bled too long in silence, colliding in a moment of honest, exhausted truth. When they pulled apart, she whispered, "Let's see what the storm leaves standing." Jake nodded. "And build from there." By morning, the media frenzy erupted. Cable news anchors debated the move. Financial analysts called it suicidal, social media fractured, half hailing her as a visionary, the other half branding her a liability. But Jake Carter didn't care about headlines. He cared about the note she left behind. It arrived at his garage in a cream-colored envelope, unsealed, unsigned, but unmistakably hers. Inside, one sentence. "This isn't about gratitude anymore, Jake." It never was. He sat with it for hours, rereading it under the dim garage light like it was a language he didn't quite speak. It unnerved him. Not because of what it said, but because of what it meant. Expectation, hope, maybe even love. For a man who built his world around needing no one, it was dangerous ground. The next day, Jake didn't go to Monroe Tower. He ignored her texts. Instead, he took Lily to their favorite spot, a quiet overlook above the East River. They sat on the hood of his truck, sandwiches in hand. Below, the city buzzed like a sleeping giant. Finally, Lily spoke. "Did something happen?" Jake didn't answer. "I think she feels something," Lily added softly. "For you." "She's from a world I walked away from," Jake said. "She's not a world," Lily replied. "She's a person." He turned to her. "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is," she said gently. "When Mom died, I thought you'd never smile again. But you smiled at her, Daddy, like you forgot you weren't supposed to." He looked away, breath catching. "She's not helping you out of pity. She needs you too." Jake swallowed. "I'm not good at being needed." "Then be loved instead." 12 years old, and somehow she saw straight through the steel plates he'd welded around his heart. That night, Alexis sat alone. For the first time in weeks, there were no calls, no meetings. No flashing lights outside the tower, just silence and a hollow ache. She didn't know if Jake had read the note, or if he hated her for what she'd risked. But she missed him, not the hero, not the engineer. Him, the man who looked at her like she was just Alexis. So she grabbed her coat. Jake heard the knock just after 10. He hesitated until Lily peeked through the curtain. "It's her." He opened the door. Alexis stood there, hair windswept, breath fogging in the cold. "I didn't think you'd come," he said. "I almost didn't," she replied. "Wasn't sure I had the right." "You always did." She stepped forward, voice trembling. "I didn't choose you because you saved me. I chose you because you reminded me I'm still worth saving too." Jake searched her face, once so impervious, now wide open and trembling. "I didn't want to be another person who needed something from you," she whispered. "I wanted to be someone you could lean on." Jake took her hand. "You already are." She blinked. "You didn't pull me out of my past," he said. "You made me want a future." He kissed her, not like a hero, not like a savior, just a man in love. Later, they curled on the couch, Lily tucked against them like it was always meant to be. The TV played a news segment about the Monroe Carter Training Initiative. No frills, no fireworks, just a mission. You still want to build it? Alexis asked. Only if we build it together, Jake replied. Even if the board fights us? Let them. They kissed again, quietly, without fanfare. This wasn't about saving each other anymore. This was about us. The Monroe Carter Training Initiative launched on a rainy Tuesday in April. No ribbon cutting. Just a modest classroom with 4 old tables, 2 whiteboards and a crooked banner that read, "Build the world you want to live in." Jake stood at the front, sleeves rolled up, a blueprint spread before him. 7 students surrounded him, some from shelters, some from the system, all looking for a second chance. Among them was Yavi, the curious kid from Jake's garage. Jake tapped the paper. "First lesson," he said. "Engines don't work because they're perfect. They work because every part knows its job and trusts the others to do theirs." One boy frowned. "You mean like teamwork?" Jake smiled. "Exactly like that." Jake had nodded quietly, as if in answer to something unspoken, something larger than the two of them. "I mean, like life upstairs," he'd said. And somewhere above them, in the glass corridors of the Monroe Center's administrative wing, Alexis Monroe walked with purpose. Her heels clicked softly against the polished floor, her posture tall and steady, despite the chaos that had erupted in the media over her recent boardroom confrontation. The press had painted her as reckless, a corporate heiress turned rebel. But she didn't feel reckless. She felt free. Her phone vibrated again. Messages from legal teams, investors, damage control experts. She ignored them all. Her thoughts were fixed elsewhere. She stepped into a glass-walled conference room that overlooked the courtyard below. And there he was, Jake Carter, standing under the late afternoon sun, surrounded by kids who laughed at his jokes and leaned into his every word as he showed them how to rebuild something with their own hands. He moved like he belonged there, not just in the space, but in the purpose. Teaching wasn't a job for him. It was breath. It was redemption. Karen slipped in behind her, holding a tablet. "You'll want to see this," she said quietly. Alexis turned from the window and glanced at the screen. A headline blared, "Stratwell Dynamics cuts ties with Monroe Media amid ethics dispute." Sources claimed it was fallout from Alexis Monroe's refusal to denounce Jake Carter, the whistleblower who'd once brought down the very engine of corruption she had unknowingly helped build. Alexis barely blinked. "Let them go," she said evenly. Karen hesitated. "It's a major loss." Alexis looked back through the window at Jake, his presence, his ease, his truth. "Then we rebuild," she said softly. "But this time, we'll know why we're building." That evening, the garage was hushed again, the hum of the day replaced by a comfortable silence that had become sacred. Lee knelt beside Jake, helping him sort bolts by size, her hands small but nimble. She'd become a fixture in the workshop, her curiosity a mirror of her father's spirit. This place wasn't just a garage anymore. It was a movement with a heartbeat, powered by sweat, scars, and hope. The side door creaked open and Alexis stepped inside with a box of takeout in one hand and a stack of folders in the other. Jake looked up and grinned. "That smells suspiciously like Chinese." "Extra dumplings," she said, setting the food on his desk. "Your reward for surviving 3 teenage boys arguing over a brake caliper." He laughed, wiping grease from his hands. "They'll figure it out, eventually." She handed him a folder. "I met with the board today." He froze, then looked at her. "And? They're split. Half want me gone. Half are afraid they'll lose me if I go. I told them I'm not stepping down." His eyes narrowed, searching hers. "Are you sure about that?" Her answer was quiet but firm. "I've never been more sure of anything." She moved closer, placing her hand gently over his. "I don't want to spend my life protecting a throne I don't believe in. I want to build something real, with you. With this." Jake stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached into his back pocket and pulled out a small, worn envelope. Its edges were frayed, the paper yellowed with time. "This," he said, holding it up, "is the final report from the crash investigation. I've carried it for years. Never opened it. I thought I needed to punish myself, that I didn't deserve to move on." He held it out to her. "I don't need it anymore." She took it gently, glanced at it once, then tossed it into the trash bin beside the workbench. "Neither do I," she whispered. Later that night, they walked through the city, side by side. No headlines. No cameras, just streetlights, distant traffic, and the rhythm of shared footsteps echoing against pavement worn smooth by time. Jake glanced sideways. "You know," he said, "I used to think I didn't belong in your world." Alexis smiled and reached for his hand. "You didn't," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "Because my world wasn't real until you walked into it." He chuckled, shaking his head. "That sounds dangerously like a line." "It's not," she grinned. "But if it were, would you fall for it?" "I already did." Back at the training center, the lights in one classroom still burned. Jarvie had stayed late, hunched over a battery unit, lost in focus. As Jake and Alexis passed by, Jake tapped gently on the window. "Don't burn the place down." Jarvie looked up, grinned. "No promises." Alexis watched him for a moment, then turned to Jake. "He reminds me of someone." Jake nodded. Someone who thought he was finished until he wasn't. And as they stood in the dim hallway, surrounded by chalkboard equations, hanging tools, and dreams scrawled in white dust, they realized something powerful. They weren't rebuilding the past. They were writing the future. Together. 1 year later. Spring returned to the city, not with fanfare, but with grace. Buds pushed through cracks in the sidewalk. Sunlight seeped into corners long forgotten by warmth. The kind of spring you'd miss if you weren't paying attention. In the far corner of Brooklyn, beneath the faded red roof of a warehouse that now bore the name Monroe Carter Training Center, the hum of engines had become the music of hope. Jake Carter stood just outside the garage, sipping from a chipped ceramic mug that read, "I void warranties." His hands were stained again, not with guilt, but with purpose. Inside, Jarvie led a group of new trainees through a battery teardown. He wore his Monroe Carter jacket with quiet pride, the nervous boy from a year ago transformed into a confident teacher. Jake smiled. A lot had changed, but not the things that mattered. That afternoon, the center held its first community open day. Families wandered through the space, marveling at test drives, peering into engine demos, even laughing as one caught fire under the grinning watch of a proud teen. On a makeshift stage in the courtyard, Alexis took the mic. She didn't wear jewels or glamour, just clarity, earned through battle and choice. "A year ago," she began, "we stood here with nothing but a vision and a lot of duct tape." Laughter rose gently. "Today, we have 72 enrolled trainees, 3 functioning labs, and 2 kids who hacked our smart lock so well, we offered them internships." More laughter. "But beyond that," she continued, her voice catching with emotion, "we have a living reminder that the best things we build in life are people when we believe in them." She glanced toward the fence where Jake stood, hands in pockets, watching her. "I'd like to invite someone up," she said. "The man who started all this with a wrench, a battered toolbox, and a heart bigger than any boardroom I've ever seen. Jake Carter." Applause erupted. Lily shouted from the lemonade stand, "Go, Dad!" Jake took the stage slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. "I don't really do speeches," he said, "so I'll keep this simple." He looked out at the crowd, at the kids, the families, the walls that once felt like a cage and now sang with hope. "I've spent my life building engines, taking apart machines older than me and bringing them back with my own hands. But the hardest thing I ever had to rebuild was myself." Silence fell. "And I didn't do it alone. I had help from my daughter, who never stopped believing in me, from a woman who saw through the grease and guilt, and from a community that said, 'We see you.'" His voice cracked just a little. "So if you're standing here today thinking you've fallen too far, you haven't, because it's not about what broke, it's about what you choose to build next." The crowd erupted in applause. Alexis stepped beside him, slid her hand into his. Their eyes met, no script, no spin, just truth. That night, after the lights dimmed and the guests were gone, they walked through the quiet courtyard. The air smelled of motor oil, fried food, and possibility. Lily walked ahead, swinging her backpack, still humming a tune from earlier. "She's growing fast," Alexis said softly. Jake nodded. I blinked, and she started correcting my grammar. "She loves you deeply. She's the best part of me. You've got a lot of good parts," she said. He turned to her. "So do you, even the sharp-edged ones." They stopped beneath the old oak tree Jake had fought to keep during construction. "It's not dead," he'd told them. "It's just waiting." Now it bloomed. They sat beneath it, watching the center's lights blink off one by one. Do you still think you don't belong in my world? She whispered. He shook his head slowly. No, I think we made a new one. One where I never have to stand alone again. He wrapped an arm around her and pulled her close. And in the hush of that night, beneath an old tree in a sky full of stars, two people who had been broken by life, by loss, by guilt, finally found their place, together, in love, in purpose, in the extraordinary miracle of a second chance. Because when kindness builds the bridge, love always finds the way across.